Hey College Success, this is your lecture video for Chapter 10. So I've got Chapter 10 slides up here and then the Chapter 10 textbook as well. So I will be using the slides and then a couple other additional resources as we go. So Chapter 10 is all about understanding financial literacy. So it encompasses so many different things. And as I often say, whenever I cover chapters like this, and I've probably said it before, that financial literacy, like money management, this is something that it impacts all of us. It doesn't matter if we're 17 and taking CCP classes or we're 72 and we're taking, going back to school. Like, we all have to think about our money management. And then we have to think about it again as our lives change, or we change careers, or our family expands, or whatever the case is. We're constantly having to think about that and manage and budget. And so it is one of the things that I think kind of just transcends no matter the age or place in life we are, a career path, college path, because unfortunately, we do have to think about how we're managing and planning our money and our debt and our credit and all of those things. So here are the beginning of the chapter kind of check-in. Do you regularly plan and monitor your finances? Do you understand the benefits and risks of credit? Do you have a plan if you are currently taking out student loans, how to repay them? And then do you take steps to protect your identity and assets? So here are the goals of the chapter, talking about different, financial goals, savings plans, best practices, financing college, and securing, our identity and accounts. So the first part of the chapter talks about just financial plans in general, the financial planning process. And so one of your quiz questions for this chapter does specifically ask about walking through the steps of this process. And so normally you would go through this like with a larger purchase, not necessarily like, oh, I have $5 to spend, right? So this is like a little bit of a larger purchase, or maybe a long-term purpose. For instance, my family, we went to Disney over the summer, and that was not like a spur of the moment decision. I had been really planning that trip for a while. And so I really did go through like these steps, really thinking about my goals and evaluating how I was going to save and get ready for that trip, and making a lot of plans on how to allocate those funds and get the best deals and then implement it. And, so it really does help you make a very thoughtful approach to those bigger decisions. And this slide goes, it's kind of showing that cyclical motion, if you will. Now, once you get into your textbook, it, as always, goes into a little bit more detail here, and then there's some beginning of the things to talk about. So here's the planning steps in more detail, like really what to do for each step. Again, larger purchases, things that you really are looking to purchase, a car, a home, your college loans, a vacation, or a laptop, like, anything like that in those realm of the goals that you're going to like save up for, and really trying to make sure that you're doing something in a very thoughtful way. So along with kind of going through that financial decision making and planning process, you also want to think about like your savings. How are you saving and how are you budgeting? Warren Buffett, who is well known for his financial success, talks about you want to make sure that you save yourself, pay yourself first. So making sure that you are putting into your budget the things that you need to do to pay yourself first. And so a budget is basically 3 elements: what's coming in, how you're saving or investing, or both, and then how you're spending it. And so you want to make sure that you are taking a look at your budget, looking to see how it's going, looking at your debt. There's some resources here in terms of how to help with that planning process. As again, we can go into budgeting here. One of the things I know that I think I talked about previously is very similar to like time management, doing like a financial management analysis, looking to see how much money is coming in, and then where are you putting your money. So part of that is definitely part of a budget. However, another part of it is just like seeing where are just the $2 here and there going, or the $5, are you buying coffee every other day or fast food every day? Like, where is the little money that's going places that's adding up to larger expenses? And so that's one of the things I try to do every few months or so, is just really take a look at my spending. I, log in, I look at our account, and I see, well, how much money really is going to fast food, or how much money is going to different activities that the kids are signed up in. And then I'm able to look at that and see, well, is there any place I can cut back from? Because I have, my budget set for my utilities and my gas and my groceries, but sometimes I don't always account for all those little extras. And so just constantly thinking about that helps me really make sure that I'm budgeting properly. And so this whole section goes into more detail about budgets. Part of that is making sure that you have like an emergency fund. What do you need to do, or what does your emergency fund look like? How much do you want to have in your emergency fund? Here is like some kind of tips on that. So cash reserved, it really is for emergencies. How much should you have in there? It should be separate from others. Have a goal in mind. How are you going to fund it? You're going to keep it like in a separate account? Are you going to, put $5 every week in there? So it really walks you through, if you don't have an emergency fund, something to really think about to make sure, because you just don't know, like an unexpected car repair, or maybe there's more money, more fees than you anticipated during a certain semester. The next section talks about choosing a bank or a credit union, and our section does go over banks and credit unions here. So I'm going to keep scrolling down. And the differences between them. So like the big difference it talks about is there's not a profit motive with credit unions. So a lot of people like that aspect of it. So this does go into kind of looking at, it's a nice kind of checklist, a comparison checklist to kind of look through. And it depends on, your needs, and if there's a credit union near you, you can always look and see. I know we used a credit union, my husband and I did, for one of our cars, because the interest rates were a lot lower than what we could get through the bank we typically go through, and we shopped around quite a few banks. So there are lots of benefits to a credit union, and so it's something that some people don't always think of right away for their banking needs, but credit unions are a nice option for lots of different reasons. And so this goes into more information about like different banking services and savings accounts and things of that nature that you get from a typical bank, and then what you can get from a credit union as well. So those are all the banking products. Credit cards and other debts. So making sure that you're aware of just debt in general, which I think we are all aware of, but how much do we pay attention to that? Are we really looking at our interest rates? Are we looking at like our debt to income ratio? So all of that is going to play a role. And you also need to know, when is enough enough? So these are kind of the things to look out for. Some of these are really obvious, right? Like if you're constantly getting collectors calling you, if your paycheck is being garnished, like those are real big red flags, But if you don't know your debt, that is something that sometimes people just aren't, you swipe your credit card, you take out your loans, and you don't always pay attention or look at the fine print. Those things you need to be aware of as well. Something else is, the credit cards. Our chapter does talk about like the benefits as well as drawbacks of credit cards, and making sure that you are making smart choices with that. You also need to know about your credit scores. This goes through what a decent credit rating looks like. If you've never had your credit checked before, if you go to Google and type in free credit estimator, and you scroll down past the ads and you go to My FICO right here. Now, if you are fairly young, you may not be able to even get an estimate, but this is nice because you don't have to put any personal information in, no social security number, nothing. I'm just going to literally like click through just to kind of show you. And so my answers are literally random. I am not, there we go. Okay, so based on my very random answering, this is the credit score that is estimated to me. I recommend that you answer yours honestly. Take the time to read the question and click through, and it's going to give you an estimate. It's not exact because it's not your actual information, but it is an estimate, and that's helpful to know. And our textbook does, again, kind of talk to you about like what does that look like and the importance of good credit, because you're going to need credit to finance large purchases, especially as even if you've already purchased a home or a car before and you're going to do it again, like your credit does need to be standing at a good position for that. Something else we want to be aware of is our debt for college, like our student debt. We want to make sure we know about all the loans, subsidized and unsubsidized, and how we're going to repay it, and the different types of financial aid. Investing in college is one of the best investments we can make in ourselves, but you also want to know what our options are. So I always like to show students, first of all, at the homepage under admissions, paying for college, you want to make sure you're aware of all the fees that you're paying every semester. Here's how many credit hours, how much you're paying, some miscellaneous fees. Everyone has like these required fees, and then all of these are based on maybe your different program or needs. That is important to know as well. I also like to make sure students know, like, look at all the scholarships. There are scholarship opportunities. So scholarship application is very quick, and you can start applying for some spring and maybe even next fall scholarships right now. Look how quick this is. A couple questions, validation, hit submit. Now, that's just for a very general foundation scholarship. Here's a more extensive list. You can look and see. Here's feature scholar, if you're a CCP student, foundation scholarships, so lots of those. Then you also have degree-related scholarships, as well as scholarships for certain demographics. So please take a look at those. Some of those applications are so quick, and it might get you $500 or $1,000. Now there's external scholarships as well. Some of these might require a little bit of writing with your application, but again, if you can get $1,000 for a couple hours worth of work, I think it's kind of worth it. So I really do encourage you to check it out and look to see if you could qualify for any of those. Something else our textbook talks about is just knowing the cost of your education along with your job market, knowing how much money you're going to make. And so there's going to be like some tables showing some student debt to your income post-graduation and how you want to make sure that you're aware of that. And I know we've looked at these resources before, but it's worth mentioning again. If you go into the bls.gov and you type in your field, you can go in there and you can see, I'm just going to click right here, some pay information. You can do the same thing with our career coach when you click in here, and you can get some pay information. So knowing that information is helpful because within 6 months or so of graduating, you have to start paying back your student loans if you have loans. So you want to know how much of your potential starting salary is going to have to be kind of geared toward your student loans. And so there are some other resources you can use. And just, again, it's all about being aware. Here talks about grants and scholarships, so I just showed you that page, making sure that you take advantage of all the grants and scholarships you possibly can before turning to loans. And then there are repayment strategies. I know right now in the news, like loan forgiveness is going around. So you want to make sure that you're just aware of all of that information. FAFSA, you can already apply for your FAFSA for the 23-24 school year, so you can start looking forward to that. And then the last section talks about making sure that you're just being secure online, that you are protecting your identity, you're not getting kind of trapped into these scams, making sure your passwords are secure. So all of this, more detail here. If you've ever known someone who's been like a victim of this, it's quite cumbersome to try to overcome it, and it can affect you for years to come. And so this section will talk about just making sure that you are doing what you need to do to protect yourself. And here are these other resources that can help you. All right, so I encourage you, especially because this chapter is so relevant to all of us, to really take a look through these sections in depth, particularly maybe if you need to really focus in on budgeting or credit cards or whatever the case might be. And I hope you have a great week. Bye.